Major changes to the organization and structure of the Roman Curia, 9 years in the making. The Roman Curia can be compared to cabinets in governments that help the Pope in day-to-day governance. Curia is a Latin term meaning court. It acts in the Pope's name and with his authority to carry out church affairs. To break it down for you, the current structure divides departments into congregations, tribunals, pontifical councils, and offices. Pope Francis created a Secretariat for the Economy in 2014. The new structure renames all congregations and pontifical councils into dicasteries and combines some departments with similar functions to reduce redundancy and work more effectively. Tribunals are now titled as judicial. Major reforms include new weight in the efforts to fight clerical sex abuse by moving the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors into the Vatican's powerful Doctrine of the Faith Office, now called the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith. This maintains it as a separate body within the dicastery, but allows for direct access to the Holy Father. The Constitution also allows for greater decision-making roles for the laity, including leading Vatican offices. Evangelization, a key concern of Pope Francis, is also in the forefront of changes as a merged dicastery for evangelization, which is directly presided over by the Pope. To dissect the new constitution further, I spoke with EWTN News executive editor and Washington, D.C. bureau chief Dr. Matthew Bunson earlier this week. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Bunson. How is this constitution, this new release, reflective of the legacy of Pope Francis and the culmination of the work that he's been doing over the past 9 years?
Well, you're right. This has been a process of well over 9 years now, of a pontificate that was really from its very beginning intended to bring reforms to the finances of the Holy See, of the Vatican, but also to bring the type of reform that we're seeing in this document. Pope Francis has made one of the great pillars of this pontificate going out to the peripheries, taking evangelization very seriously. Now, the Church, of course, is a church of evangelization, and that is one of the reasons why this document places so much emphasis on the dicastery of evangelization. It is the first dicastery listed in this document, and it gives us a sense of his pastoral priority. But we're also seeing as well the relationship between the Secretariat of State and Vatican finances, we can talk more about. Overall, I think this is very much a reflection of Pope Francis and how he likes to go about bringing these reforms.
Let's get into the language of all of that. The language around the discipline and doctrine dicasteries, it reflected a spirit of refuting heresies and promoting the integrity of the faith. Why is that so important? Well,
one of the most telling things at the very first reading for any of us of Praedicate evangelium was the fact that in the list of dicasteries, what was once considered La Suprema, which was the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, is now renamed the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith. It is now second behind evangelization. That raised some eyebrows, but we have actually seen this movement on the part of Pope Francis in placing that emphasis, as I was just saying, on evangelization. But he is not altering the role of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. It still has that key role in safeguarding the teachings of the faith. Now, I would say that its first job as a new dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith is to turn its attention once again to the German Synod, the synodal way that's underway in Germany and has been now for a couple of years. But what this really tells us is that the safeguarding of teachings is a priority and remains a priority for Pope Francis, and that's important for us to note.
And it gives us a way to proactively look at what's going on in the global church and how to make sure everyone is really looking at the deposit of the faith appropriately. There's something else that became a key, the safeguarding of minors as a priority in this document. How does the switch for the protection of minors, along with the changes that we've discussed previously, the changes to the book of the penalties, how does that affect safeguarding protocol?
Well, what this new decree does is it moves this commission on the protection of minors from sort of being isolated on its own island, placing it directly under the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, or the new dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith. This really connects, I think, the protection of minors to the institutional and legal structure that exists with the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, and it also allows for greater communication with the Holy See within itself, but especially with Pope Francis.
And then what about the Secretariat of State? You mentioned that earlier. Does this change influence how much the Curia can get involved and then the impact on financial transparency in the bureaucracy?
Well, one thing that's very clear from Praedicate evangelium is that the Secretariat of State remains very, very powerful within the wider structure of the Vatican and the Holy See. The question now is, having been separated from all of the financial aspects in order to improve financial transparency, how that relationship is going to exist between the Secretariat of State and those offices that are now created for that financial oversight. If there is not that level of cooperation that we haven't seen so far, and we can look at the case, for example, of Cardinal George Pell and his efforts to bring financial and economic reform, then many of the efforts on Pope Francis here are not going to be necessarily a dead letter, but they're going to be very, very difficult to implement and really, in the long term, to be successful.
The proof will be in the application of the document. Thank you so much, Dr. Bunson.
Good to be with you.